So, a couple vocabulary terms you need to know, right? Stereocenter versus stereoisomer. So a stereocenter is an atom within a molecule and this atom is going to have some defined configuration so that stereocenter can lead to stereoisomerism. Stereoisomer is talking about the entire molecule and its relationship to another molecule, not just an atom within. Two stereoisomers are non-superimposable upon one another, or they are not identical.